This is Dave from Dave's Decafe. I'm here with Naomi, who would like to share her story of hope about how the Recovery International cognitive behavioral practice and weekly meetings have helped her and her husband achieve new levels of calm and peace. See the links below to find a meeting you can attend in person, on Zoom, or by telephone, and another link to 1,000 Cranes for Mental Health, the organization that she started. Welcome, Naomi-san. So, tell us about yourself and your husband.
Yes. Well, I'm Japanese American and born and raised in Boulder, Colorado. And I lived in Japan for over 10 years. And my husband is Japanese from Japan. So we've been married, for over 35 years, up and down, like a lot of marriages. But he has been struggling with anxiety and depression. And I didn't really actually realize that that's what it was. I mean, it can be addressed, and he can actually not necessarily have to go through therapy, but through sessions like RI, which actually the reason why, can I go into RI? The reason why that RI really helped was the biggest point was that it was peer run, and it was not a therapy. It was not a therapist. And because we went through so many therapists because of our relationship, we had a difficult time. And as a matter of fact, just going kind of back last year, he had a breakdown, and we purchased a house, and he had a breakdown because of the house, and I had to sell it in 2 months later. And in this market, it was okay. I mean, we didn't, come out too much in the negative. So I basically said to him that he needs to get help. And we have been going to so many therapists, but none of them helped. And the reason for that was because he had a huge stigma against anything that had to do with mental health, actually. And that's pretty much what the Japanese culture is, because mental health is considered a bad reputation, and it can hurt your to even talk about it. It would be a kind of like a shame, type of thing. So it was very difficult to go to any therapist, and I would have to go with him. And even if I go with him at the therapy session, it would turn out like the therapist and myself against him, type of thing. And that's how he perceived it. Even though we had Japanese therapists, we had American therapists, we had, male therapists, we had female therapists. I mean, we went through so many. But the peer run RI made a huge difference. And it made a difference to the point that I decided that to try to emphasize on that, or to try to actually, what made the difference, okay, I'm going to go back a little bit, is that we would go to the sessions, right? And because of his English barrier, I had to have a mini session, after the session. And we would go through the steps, and we would go through, there's 4 steps, right? And we would go through the steps, what exactly was discussed, and we would go through the stories, the trivial stories that were said. And we would talk about, okay, what tools were used and why was it that this tool was used and how did it, make a difference? And then the fourth step, where, before and after type of thing. And so we started doing that, and we've only been going to RI for actually about six sessions only. And I started to change this mini session more where, I translated actually about 5 or 6 pages, out of the introductory package, the main parts. And I purchased the Better Mental Health for Everybody, for Everyone workbook, because that was I asked the RI, members as to what book would be the easiest to read and the easiest to follow. So because of the language barrier. And so they recommended this new book, this new workbook. And I noticed that it was very difficult for my husband in particular, and for myself, and the first part of the session, because the first part of the session, you do the readings, of Dr. Lowe's from Dr. Lowe's textbooks, which are very important, but they're very technical. So it went like, over his head and over mine, actually. And I couldn't, I was like, I don't know what that means, type of thing. So we started just picking up and reading from this textbook.
Can you show it to everybody?
Sure.
Yeah.
And so this workbook was much more simplified. And according, I spoke to Sandra, the CEO, and she said that basically this is that, like, they took excerpts from the textbook and they combined it to make it an easier type of, workbook. That for people like maybe for people like us, where we needed something that was more like on a daily type of basis level, and the English would be much more simplified.
So I should just mention Dr. Lowe wrote his materials and gave his lectures in the 1940s and 1950s.
Yeah, right.
And there was a lot of different language and some cultural differences even between Americans then and Americans now.
Absolutely, yeah. So actually, it's not a direct translation, because there's a lot of words in there that if I did direct translation, it would not make any sense. So I did it where it would make sense, culturally, for the Japanese. So it's working very well, for my husband and I. To the point that I decided that it would be interesting to put together another, I have to call it a workshop for fundraising, for funding purposes. But basically what I'm looking at is taking this workshop or workbook and converting it to like a maybe more like, instead of a 77-page workbook, it would be like a 50-page workbook. And I calculated that maybe it would take 2.5 months, to complete it in Japanese. And I also thought about if it would be interesting to have something that is a wellness activity, tied to this. And so because I have a nonprofit organization, actually, that I founded, which is called 1,000 Cranes for Recovery. And what I did for this nonprofit is I tie it to the building of the 1,000 cranes, which is the 1,000 origami crane story. I don't know if people know that, but it's an old Japanese tradition where the community gets together and they fold these origami cranes. They're beautiful and everything, and they look beautiful. They look, really awesome. And then what you do is you give it as a gift for peace, for hope, for recovery, basically, to somebody. And the thing about that is that a lot of people that are, especially non-Japanese, have a hard time, folding these darn, origami cranes, right? And it gets really frustrating. So I thought, okay, instead of the cranes for RI, I thought what's really important is what's important is to remember the RI tools, right? And so there's a whole list of all these tools that people can use whenever they're getting worked up. And so for my husband, he uses a lot of times the tool that what he thinks is my common sense is not always the same as everybody else's common sense. That's not exact. Well, there's a similar type of tool like that in RI. So those kind of sayings or quotes. So he uses them all the time whenever he gets worked up, and then it helps calm him down and think, okay, this is America. Americans are a certain way. There's a different culture, and my culture or Japanese culture is different. So it's helped a great deal. So the idea of replacing the folding of the 1,000 cranes is what's called tanzaku. Tanzaku is it's these long strips of colorful paper that people write their wish on. So my husband has cancer, actually. And so we were going to City of Hope. And at City of Hope, they had the tanzaku all like beautifully displayed on their trees in the front of the hospital. So people would write their wishes on the tanzaku, and it's it's for help, for hope, and for wellness. So I thought, okay, well, the RI tool is also the same thing. It's for wellness, and it's used to help navigate your own mental health. And so if we were to write our RI tools on the tanzaku and then hang it, you're supposed to hang it on a bamboo branch or bamboo tree, because bamboos are very flexible. And no matter how strong the wind is, they always like bounce back. So it's kind of like that concept. And so the whole purpose is that to ingrain, these RI tools to your own self, your thought, your train of thought or cognitive, right? And so hanging those tanzaku, on the trees, and also having maybe a display of that in your room, that could be a good reminder, a good way to ingrain or to help you remember these short, quotes from Dr. Lowe. So that's what, and the part, and so I wanted to create the workbook, right, in Japanese, and also it created for Korean and also in Mandarin. So 3 of those groups for Asian Americans in particular, we share the same type of culture, in the sense that mental health is something that we don't talk about it, and it's shameful, and it's like something that you just brush under the rug, type of thing, and it will go away. So that's why actually Asian Americans are 3 times not likely to get any treatment than Americans. And the reason for that is cultural. It's a cultural stigma and language barrier. It's a huge barrier. So that's why you never see Asian Americans, especially Korean, Japanese, and in particular Taiwanese. We share similar type of cultural values. Yeah. So it's worked out really quite well, and I'm hoping that I can create these these mini, sessions or workshops and be able to translate this workbook into those 3 languages.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So, please take a look in the links below for how you can find out more about Recovery International and meetings. Also, 1,000 Cranes for Wellness. Is that right?
Yeah, and the name of the project is going to be 1,000 Cranes for Wellness, but I have my nonprofit is called 1,000 Cranes for Recovery, and there is a website, 1000cranesforrecovery.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to breaking news
Okay,
on this. Good luck on everything. Okay.
thank you so much. Okay.